The Katowice 2019 Grand Final ended up being Stats versus soO, and you'd be forgiven if you just wrote soO off as, oh, he's just a joker, he's just going to lose another final. He's already lost the final to Stats, he's already lost the semi-final to Stats, I think. soO is just going to lose, isn't he? Stats went up 2 games in the series, and history looked like it would be repeating itself. But then soO decided to change the course of history. He changed his reality, put himself together, and played like a fucking god to take the series back. So let's just jump into it and break down each game, see what happened, see how soO made himself finally into a champion. It's map 1 of the grand final, and this is where we're going to establish what the openings were for both the players. Every single game soO went for a fast 3-hatch with gas, and pretty much every single game Stats did the same thing. He went for a fast expand. This is something that should have been brought up. Neither of these players wanted to change things up to deviate, which I think was a mistake by both of them, in a sense. But anyway, let's skip to the next important part. We've established the baseline openings. Neither of these players wants to play aggressively at the start. This overword from soO is pretty amazing for what he wants to do. He's relying on this overword heavily to give him information in the early game, and it does successfully. Skipping slightly forward, soO uses the overword to get information on what Stats is doing. He's extremely diligent with it, and he sees the finished Twilight Council, which basically means it's likely going to be Dark Temporal drops. Could be the Temporal Archives as well, somewhere hidden, but doesn't make too much sense. It's a safe assumption that it's going to be Dark Tempors. Of course, he's also going to lose the overword, because that's the price you pay. He has some links ready, doesn't really matter, safety links. Robo is coming up for the Dark Temper drops. Lair is pretty fast, it's going to finish at around 420, he wants to be really safe, he's going to have an Overseer. Stats isn't going to get one over on him in the early game anyway. So, Prism is about to finish, the DT Shrine also about to finish. Here comes the Prism, soO has a link, and I think he sees the Prism for a split second. Actually clicks on the link. I thought he didn't see it with the link initially, but he does. Going back to everyone's vision, the Overseer is morphing, he is completely ready, he has another one actually. Stats can't do anything if he decides to go for Dark Tempors, so he just merges the Archons and starts harassing. His micro was on point in this series, not like against Dark, where he made a lot of mistakes. So he's not going to lose the Archons, decides to clear some creep. This move, using a War Prism and an Observer to clear creep, is something Stats did every single game. It's one of the things that allowed him to get the first 2 wins. It's so important to keep the Zerg back, especially if the Zerg ends up using slow units. This is a move that was extremely bizarre. I don't know if Stats had a brain fart or something, this makes no sense. Just making 1 Dark Temper doesn't do anything, he should have made 2, tried to sneak in, but anyway, he saw the Overseer, so what's the point of this? Makes no sense whatsoever. So a bit of a brain fart from Stats, loses a Dark Temper for no reason, so he's like, whatever, I'll take it. Third is coming up, and it's a relatively fast third. Low defense, but he has the Adept, he has the Pylon already ready. It's safe-ish. soO, however, doesn't think so. Here come the roaches across the map. The Archons are still harassing, there are no roaches here, so Stats should know, okay, soO is coming. This is, however, something soO did that really helps out. He has sparked a changeling that blocks the Immortals from coming. So, when his army actually reaches the third base, and their ODs, exposed sentries and units, the Immortals aren't here yet because of the changeling. Let's slow the game down slightly. Stats only now notices and kills the changeling, but all the sentries are dead, and now the Immortals are on their own. No more force fields, these Immortals are going to die as well. Basically, soO looks like he already won the game. However, he makes a absolutely bizarre decision to go Spire. Look at his resources, he doesn't even have that much money. How many gases? Technically has all the gases, isn't mining from this one though, could be because of the Archon harassment. So, technically he could have been on 6 gases, but he isn't, and more importantly, he's making roaches and link speed. Roach speed already done in this game. What's missing though? No evolution chamber. Without the evolution chamber, the roaches are going to get increasingly less good, especially when the +1 attack for the Immortals finishes. soO's small roach force gets dealt with, and he killed a lot of sentries, he killed a lot of Immortals, but the worker supply is absolutely even, the base count is even, Stats is in a terrific position, he's even going to build more workers. He lost a lot of units, which was terrible by him, admittedly. But look at what soO is doing. soO isn't taking full advantage of this. He could have already went up to 4 bases. He's only taking it now, but he isn't even going to drone up to saturate this base. He still hasn't fixed the geyser problem, which might be intentional considering the amount of roaches he's making. But still, if you're going to make a Spire for 5 Mutalisks, it's just not worth it, is it? Dealing with the War Prism is much easier if you have Hydralisks or basically anything that doesn't force you to spend so many resources on something like the Spire. And also, Stats harassing lets him know, I only see roaches and queens, you have 3 bases worth of gas, where is all the gas going? Stats thinks it's Mutalisks already, it's not even a surprise, so the surprise factor doesn't even go soO's way. It was a terrible decision to go for the Spire, and it's going to end up costing him the game, because his evolution chamber is too late, his unit composition is too weak, he has basically only roaches and links. That's not good enough considering Stats' army. Here comes the evolution chamber, and honestly, too little too late. This upgrade is almost never going to be on time, considering Stats is going to have +2 before soO has +1. So, not much more that's going to happen in this game. The Mutalisks come in, there are cannons, there's the War Prism with Archons chasing them. Unless soO gets extremely fortunate, these Mutas aren't going to do anything, and he already lost one. He's basically banking on an overreaction from Stats, and Stats is too good at the game to overreact to 4 to 5 Mutalisks. soO is stuck making roaches, he doesn't even have the +1 attack. What are these roaches going to do? He doesn't even have that many Ravagers, just starts morphing the first 4. He's out on the map and he's trying to catch Stats off guard, basically trying to catch Stats not looking, which is possible, to be fair, but Stats is going for the Temporal Archives. His +2 attack is literally done as he's out on the map, and this is when soO decides to engage him, but as you can tell, Stats is looking at his army, he's not going to fuck up. He's in a fairly decent position here. You don't need that many force fields to block this off, and Ravagers are decent at dealing with force fields. Obviously they can destroy them, but the force fields still buy you enough time. Stats is dealing with smaller parts of soO's army. Basically, soO hasn't surrounded him properly, and also Stats' micro is on point, like I already said. He isn't going to let his Immortals die easily. He's clearing most of soO's units, and soO can't do anything. He's stuck making units. His +1 attack isn't finished, like I already said. Loses 2 Overseers here. He can't afford to lose any more Overlords than he's going to. He's at very high supply, but can't even get that high, considering he just lost his entire army. And like I also mentioned earlier, he isn't even mining from the 4th base. This was a pretty low econ game by soO. He basically looked all-in, which once again doesn't make sense if you're going Spire. Why would you all-in and then waste the resources anyway on the Spire? I think this game was very disjointed by soO. I think he didn't know what he was doing. He looked very flustered. It was the grand final. It was expected from soO to be flustered, especially in the first game. These Overlords are going to get sniped in a second. The +3 attack is unnecessary as fuck. The Storm is unnecessary and he doesn't even go research it because he sees basically only roaches. You don't need Storm to deal with the roaches. Just the Archons will do. That'll do pick. Basically soO is already dead. I think he knows it, I think Stats knows it. He's playing it slow and safe just in case, but look at the +1 attack. It's still not finished. Only now. Look at the state of the game. Just now, 10 minutes, 10-20 into the game, does the +1 attack actually finish for soO? It's too little too late, Stats wins this game pretty handily. The Spire was a terrible, terrible decision. As you can tell, nothing is happening, only roaches. Final attack, pretty straightforward, the Immortals aren't even getting hit most of the time. GG. Time for map 2, Cyber Forest. Like I already said, fast expands for both players. Stats I don't think ever went Nexus first, so he always showed respect to soO by putting down the gateway. This is a small mistake he makes a couple of times. He always goes Adept first. He's basically respecting soO a bit too much, but that's understandable. soO is one of the best players in the world. And then goes Stalker to kill the Overward, which always scouts his tech. Using Hyperbow, of course, there's one game where he doesn't. The Overward is even going to survive, I think, for a bit. Warp Prism incoming, but this is the funny part. This is a new build from Stats. I think Stats basically had 2 builds prepared for the series, and this is the second one. He's going to use the Warp Prism and Observer again to clear creep, but this time he's only going to use Stalkers, which was very bizarre, to be honest, to watch. It actually worked in the first game. This move, I think, was one of the biggest APM sinks you could imagine. I don't think it's worth killing this one Overward. Stats seemed to think it was worth it, and he did kill the Overward in the end. But I think this just delayed his denial of the creep spread way too much. But whatever, he warps in the 4 Stalkers, he starts clearing the creep. Let's slow down the game because I can't talk that fast. soO basically sees it's only Stalkers, makes only links, no Roach Warren, the lair is slightly late. He's taking his gases a bit later, and he hasn't wasted any gas on the roaches. First 5 roaches coming up, doesn't really need to make these roaches for defense, but he isn't really making them for defense, as we're about to see. Twilight Council and Robo are busy for stats. He's going for the +2 attack again. He's going to be playing mostly Robotech throughout the series. Charge is coming for the Zealots, that's important. And as always, using the Warp Prism to deny creep. Hydra then coming up for soO in this game. So right now he decided, you know what, the Spire was a mistake. I'm not going to go Spire again. Relatively low gas income, only 4 geysers. And here comes the Overseer. He is trying to snipe the Observer, but Stats did such a good job of preserving the Observer throughout the series, so he isn't even going to get it. I don't really like the Stalkers, look at how bruised they are. The links are denying them a little too easily. But anyway, let's see what soO is doing. 2 Overwards queued up, he's at 130 supply right now. And no more drones, he's stuck on 54. Funnily enough though, Stats himself isn't making any more probes right now. He's staying pretty low on economy as well, taking the third pretty fast as usual. Low defense though, which he's going to pay for eventually, but not in this game. Pretty fast third, but no more probes, so Stats is playing safe. He is expecting something a bit more aggressive from soO, and he's right, because look at the production tab. No upgrades for the Hydralisks, no evolution chamber, not even roach speed, though I admit the roach speed was probably an oversight, not intentional. soO is going for a slow Hydra, slow roach, queen, Owen, which is bizarre as fuck. This geyser is late as fuck. I don't know if soO was even more flustered than the first game, because this doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's very hard to bust a Protoss player with such a slow army. Funnily enough though, Stats doesn't see this. So Stats goes back to probe production. He doesn't do a phenomenal job in scouting, but the Phoenix does see another geyser. Though I think he did see that no one was mining from the geyser, so it's a fake geyser basically. Stats should know something is off. The Hydra then wasn't juggling, so no upgrades. He could think the upgrade just finished, right? But there are 2 upgrades. It doesn't make any sense. The Hydras aren't upgrading, he doesn't see an evolution chamber anywhere I should say. The links do push the Warp Prism slightly, and I think soO does manage to hide the army for a little bit anyway. But right about now, he should know. I think here he spots the Hydra, so he assumes it's going to be Yoin. He pulls his entire army back into the third base. The Phoenix is here and he saw no gas in the main. It's basically pretty obvious, it's definitely not Mutalisk this time. And now he can see the giant army from soO. And I think here is where a lot of players would have lost the game, but Stats just comfortably goes back to his third base and basically dares soO to push into the second and gets around it, which soO isn't going to do. Roach speed is coming up, and this is, I think, why it's an oversight. He should have had this already. I guess he could have wanted a few more roaches, but let's be honest, that doesn't make a lot of sense because your reinforcements will be slower. The creep got pushed back, so it's not even that far extended. Though soO did do a good job pushing it back forward. Making some lings as well, which reeks of desperation because he knows his roaches are too slow. Some force fields get put down. The +2 attack is about to finish for Stats, and here is the small force soO uses to basically try and bait Stats to come down the ramp. But Stats is still good at the game. He's going to calmly build up a smaller force to deal with this, and then start fighting on two fronts. I know technically 4 Zealots, 4-ish Zealots isn't an army and 1 Immortal, but Stats is pushing from two directions and soO's army is so slow he can never retreat. As soon as he turns around, everything dies. These two Ravagers morphed so late. I think they started morphing after soO's initial army started pushing into the second base, so he wasn't really ready for the force fields. Granted, there weren't that many sentries, so maybe that's why. But still, these Ravagers were a bit late. I think he could have used a few more Ravagers as well. But in the end he decided not to. Only Roach is coming up again. Roach speed isn't ready. Stats is dealing with this force magnificently. And as you can tell, soO can't really retreat. He couldn't flank from this angle because his army was too slow. Stats could have killed one army, then turned around and killed the second army. It's just such a terrible build, I think, again, from soO. Didn't go for the Spire this time around, but went for a very slow army, and that army was banking on Stats being too greedy. Stats barely has 50-ish probes. He never got too greedy. He's even playing hyper safe with a cannon for a potential counterattack from Lynx. There's nothing soO can do at this point, he's already dead. Stats has quite a few units, he isn't even going to sit back and defend because there's no point. He has the upgrade lead, he has the army composition lead, if you can call it that. +3 attack starts, that upgrade is utterly pointless right about now, he doesn't really need it, it's never going to go this long, considering how he's posturing forward. soO never took a forward base, and Stats knows it's pretty pointless for soO to stay in the game, he's just trying to get a lucky engagement, but he's basically rebuilt his original army, but now Stats has even more, he's never going to lose this fight. soO tries to go up the ramp, realizes he's about to get fucked if he does. I think no more sentries in this army, I can't see any anyway, but doesn't really matter, the ramps are not that big, considering the amount of units Stats has. soO is going to go for one last ditch attempt, flanking from two sides. The Roaches now have speed, so he thinks this can work. I think this is slightly better than waiting for Stats to come up this ramp and then just kill you. Then again, he could have set up a concave here, he could have postured for a bit longer, but here's the problem. No upgrades, so the longer this goes, the worse it gets, because Stats started +3. I think this was the desperation attempt, final last ditch attempt by soO, and obviously it's not going to work. Stats micros pretty straightforwardly and ends up killing soO on both fronts. Super straightforward, 2-0 for Stats. And at this point, soO himself admitted in the interview, he thought, God, it's happening again, I'm going to lose. It's time for Game 3, Kairos Junction. Stats made a slight change, he went for 2 Adepts in a row instead of going for the Stalker second. Basically he's trying to put some more pressure on soO, but soO has made 2 extra links, he's ready for the Adepts, he knows. He has the Overword, his trusty Overword that always gets him the correct information. He basically knows exactly what Stats is going for, and Stats isn't this kind of Protoss, he's never going to finish this shade. He isn't someone who's going to lose the 2 Adepts to get 4 drone kills, that's not his playstyle. but he still gets some decent harassment, even going to kill this drone. Oh, that was slick by soO. Doesn't get to kill the drone, I guess. And soO is pretty prepared. This is basically just a tactic used to scout that soO isn't going for anything crazy. Stats isn't going to even lose the one adept. This is basically Stats built from game 1 though. He's going once again for the Robo, Twilight and DT Shrine. soO again scouts it. The overword is already dead. I didn't show that because I already explained it. If you scout with the first overword, it's always going to get killed, especially if your opponent goes for a stalker. Now, here's where soO made a bit of a blunder. He didn't respect the Dark Shrine enough and his lair is a bit late. He thought he could just make the Spore Crawler and that would be fine. He had to morph the Spore Crawler anyway early because he was going to lose the drone, so he thought to himself, well, Stats didn't go for the GT drop the first time anyway, he morphed Archons right away, he's not going to do it again. Now, I think the lair does finish in time. If he started the Overseer right away, he could have still had it by the time the War Prism arrives, but I think soO underestimated Stats, and honestly Stats made a pretty ballsy call to go for the Dark Tempers and just run in. If an Overseer is ready now and there are like a few roaches here, he could lose the Dark Tempers, especially considering how far away he left his War Prism. But instead, he immediately kills the Spore Crawler, and here's where he makes a slight miscall. There's no way he could know that the Overseer isn't ready or isn't morphing right away. So Stats could have sniped the hatchery, which he realizes halfway through this attack. Instead of going for drones and wasting his time, he almost kills the hatchery, but the Overseer is just in time. He realizes he might lose the Dark Temper, so he just gets out. Once again, Stats likes to play it safe, he doesn't overextend. He could have sacrificed the Dark Tempers to kill the hatchery and maybe it would have been worth it, I don't know. But there were some transfusions, I think. It was such a risky call. It's not in Stats' playbook to go so risky. And here's where soO makes an adjustment. Goes for the road speed right away. No bullshit this time around, no random attacks. Goes for the Hydra then, no Spire, no bullshit. Stats is going for the same build basically from game 1. Fast expand, he's ready for some harassment, he has 2 adepts, soO can't do anything against that. While also defending, of course. The Archons and Observer are incoming, they're going to clear the creep. This is basically what Stats did the entire series, nothing too significant. This is the first evolution chamber from soO that comes in and is going to finish at around 6 minutes. And this is where, in my opinion, he starts to turn the series around. He decided, enough with the silly attacks, enough with the silly aggro plays. I'm just going to play safe, get up to a good drone count, get up to a good unit count, and then I'm going to crush him. Stats harasses soO, and with immaculate micro, he didn't lose any Archons, he didn't lose any Observers throughout the series, it feels like, when he was harassing. Meanwhile, soO decides, like I said, he's going defensive. Hydra range first, which means he's definitely planning on going defensive. He wants to defend these 3 bases against an attack from Stats, and Stats is going to get caught off guard. Even more drones incoming. Meanwhile, Stats keeps making some probes, Immortals, plus 1 attack, Zealot speed. I just got distracted by the 13 Hydras because this is how you actually deal with a War Prism, not 5 Mutalisks as the casters were trying to suggest in game 1. That abysmal decision by soO then. So, the decision making wise, this is perfect from soO. This geyser once again isn't getting mined from. Maybe this is intentional and I'm just an idiot for not noticing earlier. But yeah, once again, a geyser not getting mined from. This is a bit suspect, but whatever. soO is better at the game than me for sure, so he knows what he's doing. Overwords morphing, Tempo Archives coming up for Stats, and honestly, I think this is where he makes a bit of a blunder because he doesn't start Storm right away. I could be getting the games confused as well, it's possible. Anyway, here is Stats army again. When you make units and you're not getting attacked by your opponent, as a rule of thumb, it's a good idea to go out onto the map and pressure with them. But here's the problem. soO hasn't taken a fourth hatchery. He hasn't even put down a fake one like he did in game 1. And he hasn't put down one in game 2 because he was going for the all-in. So at this point, Stats might be a little confused. He might think this is the same as game 1. soO has the fourth hatchery, so I should be the one to pressure him, right? But he's absolutely wrong. soO is playing this hyper safe. Worker supply is even, army supply is up for soO though. And he hasn't overextended at all economically. He's waiting for Stats to come up this ramp, which if he does, he's going to lose immediately. If he goes around from here, he could do some cute stuff with the War Prism, but you don't want to be fucking around with the War Prism against fucking Hydra. So I think at this point Stats realizes, wait, maybe my boy soO hasn't actually taken a fort. He checks this base, it's empty. He checked this base a while ago, it was empty. I think right about now, he realizes, oh shit, I've overextended. Storm isn't ready, and even if it was, there were no high tempers in this army. Stats gets caught off guard, and soO perfectly funks him. When I was watching this the first time, I thought this was a big dick move from soO because it felt like a slight overextension maybe, because he doesn't really need to go out and face this army. Then again though, he is maxed, Stats is overextending himself, and there is no fort base. He needs to make something happen with this army. His economy isn't that good. His resources are spent basically. He is maxed, but this army needs to do something. And he could have just attacked the base straight away. Then again, Stats could have recalled and soO would be screwed because this army would do so much better defensively. Instead, soO forces Stats to waste so much energy on force fields. Look at this giant area and this giant amount of force fields being wasted. The counter-attack speed for the Hydralisks is almost ready. More roaches are incoming. soO's bank is completely spent while Stats hasn't spent his bank because he's getting ready for the high tempers, I think. soO can't really chase up this ramp if Stats still had the energy, but he only has 3 sentries left and not that much energy. He realizes he's completely out of position and soO is going to chase him all the way back to his base. Basically a giant overextension by Stats, considering he never scouted the fort base by soO. If he just sat back, made some shield batteries, he could have gone into a longer game, but it feels like Stats was a bit too in love with the idea of attacking. His +2 attack wasn't even finished. This was just a huge anti-timing by Stats. soO doesn't overextend in this area, which would be basically Stats' only chance now. Instead, he breaks down the rocks and uses his giant ass army to push in for the kill. Stats has some decent micro in this fight, but what did we say about the sentries? He spent so much extra energy, there are barely any force fields left, and there are also Ravagers, so not enough left for Stats. The overextension ends up costing him. +2 attack finishes right about now, and it's too little too late. soO had his own attack ready, he had his giant army ready, and he basically did what he was trying to do in game 2, but so much better and so much safer. Only now he puts down the fort base. Even if this somehow magically gets cleaned up, soO can go up in tech, he can go up in lurkers or hive and do whatever he wants. Stats doesn't have a fort base himself, so soO is in the driver's seat and he's going to take this series, take this game to come back in the series. GG. It's map 4, King's Cove. soO has just scouted the early robo, so this is going to be Stats build from game 2 with the War Prism, Observer, Stalker harassment on the creep. However, once again, he is allowed soO to take the greediest opening he can. Of course, ignoring 3 hatch before pull. And I think this is where Stats kind of started really losing the series. He was up 2-1, and this is a terrible map for Protoss in my opinion. So this is where he should have gone for an all-in, not with his standard and bizarre Stalker War Prism play. Because look at the map. soO is going to get a pretty easy fort base because you can defend it coming down this ramp and this ramp. While where is Stats himself going to take a fort base? This one? Really, you want to take this forward base against a Zerg player? I don't think so. So, at best, Stats should have done a 3 base soO win, possibly even a 2 base soO win to give himself a better chance. Instead, he goes for the standard War Prism and Stalkers, standard by his standard. While soO decides to go late gases and only defend with links, he basically read this build. He knows it's this build already, and he knows he doesn't need anything other than queens and links to defend. So he can play even more greedily, get even more drones. Still, Stats does what he wants, gets to clear the creep with his stalkers, doesn't have to invest too early in DT tech or high tempo tech. Funnily enough, if he did go for the high tempo tech early, it would have been much more helpful this game. Waiting for the first deviation, and here it is. soO decides to go for a Bane Nest. Once again, the evolution chamber is coming up, which was, I think, the key adjustment he needed to make from games 1 and 2. You need an early evolution chamber for +1 attack, or your units just don't do enough damage against Protoss. So he's going for the Bane Nest. This is going to be a Link Hydra Bane composition from soO, and it makes sense because Stats, if he ever decides to take the forward base, this is a great composition to absolutely crush that. And he isn't even going to go for the fort. Twilight Council coming up for Stats, nothing too out of the ordinary. Hydra then coming up for soO, as you would expect. There is no Roach Bane composition. Stats is doing his best to clear overwards, clear creep with the War Prism, but it's not really good enough, to be honest. And considering what soO is going for, once again, +1 range before the speed for the Hydras. soO wants to make sure he's safe. He doesn't want to die before he's ready to take the fight to Stats. And honestly, Stats always goes low on probes, which ends up hurting him in the end, I think. Here's the high tempo tech, relatively late considering when he could have started this, especially when you know it's going to be Hydras. There are no Roach Bane compositions. Then again, he hasn't scouted the Bane Nest, has he? Scouting in general, I think, was slightly weak for Stats in this series. Look at all this energy. He could have had a Phoenix earlier slightly, but he does see the Bane Nest now. He sees the Hydras. He should know. It's pretty obvious what the composition is going to be, but here's the problem. What can Stats even do at this point? He's chosen to go for a macro-ish game, goes back into pro production, but how is he going to take the forward base? Is he going to take this forward base? Is he going to take this forward base? Not fucking really, is it? Bane speed is coming up, +1 attack is almost finished. soO then is going to start the +1 speed to counter-attack with the Hydras, of course. Meanwhile, Stats has a very low number of units and he's going to go for a pressure on soO, but I'll be honest, how can you pressure soO when he has so much creep, relatively speaking, considering Stats was busy clearing it? He has a very mobile force which he can surround you with. This really felt like a bad build order decision by Stats, and you're going to see why in a second. He even thinks about going for the flank, which would have been really cool if he sent a bigger force. Instead, he's just going to use these couple of links to go and harass the third, while also getting +1 attack for his melee units. Basically, everything is going soO's way right now, and let's switch to the stats cam to see just how fucked he is at this point. He sees that the creep is extended again, and right about now sees a pretty big army which he can deal with just 4 sentries. Too many force fields. He just can't attack through here, and I think it's pretty obvious. Also, what's even worse, he has 1 cannon, but that's not really enough to deal with this. He has to do a number of warpins at home. +2 attack is finished, but how is he supposed to attack with this? It just doesn't make any sense, does it? There isn't an angle he can get that works. Maybe if he went this way and then tried to go up this ramp, but I don't even know. You have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to figure out how this was ever going to work. Storm is now on the way, but it's so late. He's even chronoing it. +3 attack is on the way. This upgrade is so fucking worthless considering what's about to happen. It's just so optimistic to think soO is going to let him sit back, get +3, maybe even tech switch to Colossus. Stats goes back into attack mode because this is a slightly smaller choke. It feels funny calling this a choke, doesn't it? especially when soO's army is incoming. But Stats is desperately trying to buy some time. Templars are warping in just now, I think, so they barely have any energy. Storm isn't even done yet. He's trying to buy some time for more Templars and Storm, but he has to micro here. A few panic force fields, to be honest. He misplays slightly, he gets caught on the map, and he's going to even lose some units. Maybe not this Archon, because he can pick it up with the War Prism, but still, he lost a lot of units. soO has tons of Warva because he took an early fort hatch. I don't think he has a macro hatch, but basically this one is the macro hatch. So, tons of Warva, lots of Lings incoming, Banelings incoming, +1 attack about to finish, everything is going soO's way, and what is that supposed to do at this point? He only has a couple of Templars, he's chosen the wrong build. This Baneling attack was sneaky as fuck, not gonna lie. soO tries to distract him here. It was pretty obvious and he went back too early. He could have delayed a bit more, but I don't really think he was trying to get a ton of probe kills. He just wanted to force them out to even deny more mining from Stats. Not that his resources are spent anyway. The Banelings get decent hits on the Zealots. Some decent-ish force fields go down, but remember, he has 4 storms and then he's out. 3, 4. These storms got nothing. Look at all these Banelings about to knock out the Templars. Probes are even having the audacity to come back. This is just pointless, big mistake as well. soO has too much, and he also has pretty fast reinforcements. +3 attack, like I said, is absolutely worthless. This could have been more Templars, whatever. All the storms are gone now, all the Templars are gone. soO is just going to row him over immediately. There's nothing Stats can do. He chose the wrong build order and then made some small misplays as well. 2-2, the series is even again, and soO is back from the dead with some solid ass play. GG. It's map 5, Port Alexander, and let's be clear, up to this point, Stats was always going to win the first 2 games. soO played awfully in those. In the 3rd game, soO caught Stats off guard, and that's how he managed to secure the win. He basically did a much better build than he did in game 2. And in the 4th game, soO was always going to win, because Stats went for the wrong build order. Once again, Stats has decided to make some changes in order to try and get one over on soO, but I think this is the point where Stats starts playing off book. I don't think he planned this, what he's about to do. I think he's going to make some changes on the fly and try to get the win. The first change he does is build the Stalker first, and he's even chronoing it out to deny soO's trusty Overword, the Overword that kept scouting all his tech. I think soO partially realizes it. Maybe he doesn't know that you can still see the Overword over these boxes. He has to get all the way over here to save the Overword, and I think he just doesn't realize it's going to be the Stalker. This was a brilliant decision by Stats, so he can hide his tech. Unfortunately, he goes for a Stargate, and the unfortunate part is going to come in a second. Here we go. Just about now. Now? Come on. Come on, soO. Come on, soO. 2 queens on the way. Overword. Come on. I'm just staring at the production tab. Come on, soO, don't let me down. Where are the spores, soO? Where are the spores? So, soO doesn't think Stats is going for the same builds he already went for. Remember, in the previous 4 games, Stats had 2 builds. Either Robo, that he harasses with using Stalkers and the Observer and the War Prism, or he goes for the Dark Templars, in which case he uses Archons to deny the creep. So why is soO going for Spore Crawlers and not the Lair? It's 335, no Lair. Not even mining gas. soO doesn't think this is going to be Dark Templars, in spite of not scouting it. Here you can see he hasn't scouted it. He only saw the first few buildings. This is weird because when you make a Stalker, it usually doesn't mean Stargate. This is so much more likely to be a no-win from Stats. But soO just, his star sense decides, you know what, it's probably a Stargate, isn't it? And because Stats used a Stalker to kill the Overlord instead of a Phoenix, he just assumes it's going to be Oracles. And then makes 2 Spore Growers instead of 3. I think this was a bit of a mistake, and he's going to get punished on the second base. It's really cool if you can deny the Oracles, if you can make the Protoss pussy out and decide not to go into the second base. I think that's what soO was banking on, but it's not going to work out, and Stats himself makes a good decision not to go right away with the Oracle, because if he went with just the one Oracle, soO would have confirmation, he would make the other Spore Grower and then just get away with murder, while waiting for the 2 Oracles lets you kill a few more drones. And overall, I think it was a cool idea to mix things up by Stats, but I don't think this was planned because of his follow-up, which is always going to be, not always going to be, but is going to be, his standard Robo Twilight Council. And here's the problem. You have to look at this Stargate as something that delays Stats' normal play by about a minute. And you're going to see why this is a problem in about a minute. Stats goes onto the map with the Oracles, they don't even get scouted, but like I said, soO's Star Sense gives him enough information, he decides it's Stargate, and he's right. Now, like I already said, he's going to get punished for not properly defending the second base. All his queens were at the third, he was banking on Stats stopping here first, I guess. Doesn't really work out for him. Like I already mentioned, the lair is super late. He didn't think this was Dark Templars. Remember what Stats did to him with the Dark Templars a few games ago? If soO had any thought that this was going to be DT tech again, he was going to make the lair much faster. And here's another key adjustment he makes. soO decides to make a bunch of links, because if you're focusing on Stargate, everything else is going to be a little later. And it's going to pay dividends for soO, because Stats has been taking greedy ass third bases. Stats does recall the Oracles, he doesn't have that much energy though left on them. This one has a ton of energy, what am I even saying? But soO made more than enough links, he's been droning up heavily, he has enough to cancel this base, and basically the Stargate is to blame for this. Also the late Pylon, which also has to get cancelled, because soO could just turn around and kill the Pylon. Basically a huge blunder for Stats, he has a ton of Zealots, but they are in his second base, he warped them too late, the Pylon wasn't ready. So it's at this point that Stats has to decide what he's going to do, an all-in or try to get the third base again. He decides to get the third again, because if he doesn't, soO is going to scout it and just has to build defense to survive. Stats is forced to get the third base again, which always sucks as a Protoss player, but this is where I thought soO would lose the game. He goes for the Spire again, and I was tearing my hair out. I was like, not like this, soO, not like this. Because if you go Spire into a Protoss player who already has a Stargate, what do you expect is going to happen? He's going to build like 4 Phoenix and end the game. What's the point? But soO is actually going for a fake Spire. I don't know if this is terrible or brilliant, really in the eye of the beholder, but it's going to work out for him. Let's fast forward again. Oracles are still on the map, they're scouting the links, War Prism is ready with some Archons finally, but look at how late this is comparatively to the previous games. The creep is a lot more spread out, Stats has a lot less information in spite of having the Oracles, because there are spores everywhere, queens everywhere. And he does clear creep, he does see some roaches. Once again, soO is up on 3 bases, that's basically 6 gases. And he does scout the Spire. So, Stats thinks this is literally game 1 from soO. He's going to go for some weird Spire build, which makes sense if you're Stats. You scout the Spire, you scout the extra gas, though to be fair, no one was mining, unless he killed the drones and I didn't see. Scouts the Spire finish, so it wasn't a cancel. Goes into more probes, builds some cannons, builds the first Phoenix. He basically is pretty sure it's going to be Mutas. Even pulls the War Prism back. However, this small mistake is going to cost him again. Lynx managed to run into the main, and soO gets all the information in the world. even gets to see the one Phoenix he baited out. And once again, unless he forgot there was a Stargate as all these Orcos were flying around over his bases, it makes no sense to go for the Spire against someone who already has a Stargate and can just put down a second Stargate. In the worst case scenario, obviously. One of the Orcos does die, the Spire gets scouted for the 5th time, and he can even see there are no upgrades, which is why I think he stopped making Phoenixes after the 1. He decided this was a fake, and he was right. But here's the thing, Bane Nest is coming up, Hydra range is coming up, the Evolution Chamber is late, and why is it late? Because of the useless Spire. So I don't like this fake from soO. I think it could have gotten him killed, especially when you consider what's about to happen. So, Stats got kinda faked out, he made a few more cannons than he wanted to, made the useless Phoenix. But here's the problem. soO is dead. Right now, soO is absolutely dead. He's taking the 4th base, he's droning up to 70. He's even making a few more drones after this. There is no reason he can survive this right now. Army supply is pretty much even, but the quality of the army isn't the same. Roaches don't have the +1 attack yet. Banelings don't have speed. There aren't even any Banelings, to be honest. Hydra at range isn't even completely ready. soO is absolutely dead. If Stats just walks across the map, goes into the 3rd base, he can even pick off the Evolution Chamber, the game is over, right? Let's go to the stats cam. What does Stats see? No 4th base. He sees a ton of creep with his observer. His Phoenix gets to work. But here comes the observer, here comes the army. No 4th base for soO. And I think this is the biggest mistake of the entire series. Stats assumes, maybe correctly, that soO is doing the same build from games 2 and 3. Where he went basically 3 base, massed up units, and then went over and killed him. So if you're Stats, there are 2 things you can do right now. Attack again, overextend, and get killed. In his mind, remember, soO isn't at 150 supply. soO is about to be 170, 190, and crush him with Hydras, Banelings, Roaches, anything. But this is where the crucial mistakes comes in. He sees no 4th base here, so he just assumes soO is doing the same build, there is no 4th base. And as we can tell, that's completely wrong. soO is up to 77 drones, he's getting so much free income, and Stats is so confused. Stats thinks this is the same build, he goes back, this was the critical mistake of the series. He could have won this game then and there, but now he's given soO too much time, and you're going to end up seeing that all this time made it so soO could barely hold, and this is going to be minutes later. Remember, Stats could have killed him at around 7:30, 8 minutes if he attacked. It's up to 9 minutes now. He's given soO almost 2 to 3 minutes more than he should have gotten. soO is now even making links. He has Hydra speed on the way. The Baneling speed is almost finished. 34 Banelings morphing. These Banelings couldn't have existed 2 minutes ago. The Roach attack, the +1 attack, couldn't have existed because of the useless Spire. Stats is still not attacking. It's 9 minutes into the game. He is so mind-gamed right now, it's unreal. And what's even funnier is that soO doesn't even understand Stats has such a huge army, I think. He goes for the 5th base. This was a fucking hilarious move, considering this was the greediest fucking base ever. Imagine a world in which this lives, and soO still hasn't taken this one. So I think when these Zealots saw the 5th base, he realized, oh shit, if soO is taking this base, this isn't a hidden base, this is a 5th base. So if soO is taking a 5th base, he must have a 4th. Stats was on low probe counts throughout the series. He did it again in this game. He doesn't even have a Temporary Archives, I think, or he didn't research Storm. Let's see. He does have Storm, actually. So where are the Tempors would be a great question, right? +2 attack is almost finished. He got Storm, but didn't make any Tempors. Makes no sense. soO is going to overextend because, I'll be frank, I think soO just thinks the game is over. Because he is literally taking a 5th base. This is just such a style move from him, it makes no sense. He sees that Stats is out on the map. To be fair, the Tempors are going to punish him. He has a sizable chunk of army, and maybe this overextension extended the game, basically gave Stats life in this game. The storms are pretty brilliant though, perfect force fields, some more brilliant storms. Stats brings the game back. More links are on the way though, and look at this giant territory he has to cover. These 4 Zealots were the ones Stats was hiding here, which could have been stopped if soO put down the 5th Hatchery here. He could have defended them easier, instead he's going to take some damage. And this is going to allow Stats to ping pong his way into killing the 5th base, but honestly soO doesn't give a fuck about the 5th. Like, who cares about the 5th base when Protoss has no fort? 5th base dies, no cancel. soO is so bad at the game. Kappa. +3 attack on the way, the most useless upgrade in the game. Stats starts attacking the 4th base, but in spite of soO's army being out of position, look at how much army he has. And even look at the income, he can keep making units. He only has to hold this force from Stats and he outwins. He can flank even, he doesn't I think, but still, he could. His force is fast enough. Banelings come in, they kill most of the Zealots. Hydras are here, Queens are here. He can even fight with the drones, he can use them as get to Zerglings. Immortals are hitting drones a lot of the time, which buys him enough time considering the low amount of roaches. And look at the units killed. 19 drones are killed. You would think the Protoss is so close to winning, right? Nope, 57 drones to 57 probes. soO doesn't give a fuck. The main base is almost mined out, these drones can get transferred over. There is nothing stopping soO from winning this game. Stats got completely mind gamed into thinking soO only had 3 bases and he gets punished completely. More Tempors on the way, too little, too late. You would think Stats has all the tools to hold the 3rd base, but imagine a scenario in which he does hold. What difference does it make? He has no 4th base, his main is almost mined out, 2nd base is even getting close to mined out. He is going to be stuck on 1 base against the Zerg that can expand anywhere. And look at the giant Zerg army. soO isn't interested in a longer game, soO is marching across the map, he's going to take some sick engagements and finish this game. Mechanically speaking, soO has been playing brilliantly this tournament. Even look at the trap, gets only 4 units caught, 1 Hydra to be fair. And here come the storms, decent ass storm, but still, the only thing it hit was Banelings, who killed all his Zealots anyway. Warping in even more Desperation Zealots, this just reeks of desperation overall. No shield batteries for the Immortals, Stats is dead. soO plays it patiently considering he's massed up units and is attacking. Storm hits almost nothing, 2nd storm hits only Banelings, who get to kill the army anyway. soO's army is too big, his brain is too big. He's taking the lead in the series for the first time ever on the 5th map, 3-2, and going into the final game of the series. Stats should be beyond fucking tilted. It's time for Year 0, the last map of the series. I bet soO wishes this was Year 0 and not the last year of his career. Single tear going down my cheek. This is where I think Stats is completely tilted. He once again lets soO go for the 3-3 hatch after the pull, to be fair. He himself goes for the same opening, but I think he's beyond tilted because he already figured out not to go for this Adept at the start of the game. He figured out he should go Stalker, and he doesn't. He goes for the Adept to go across the map. He thinks soO out of all people. The guy who gets nervous in finals and chokes them away is going to go for something aggressive. So he decides to go for the Adept to go and scout instead of killing the Overlord, allowing soO once again to see what tech he's going for. So, from soO's vision, this is a robotics facility, and what did we say about Stats? He basically has 2 main builds, one of which is the War Prism, Stalker, Harass on the creep, and this is what soO thinks the build is going to be. Which makes sense in a way, because you can't really pull off successful all-ins on this map. However, Stats has chosen the right build for the wrong map, as we're about to see. I think at this point he really was tilted, because that previous game should have been won by him if he just scouted that there was a fort base, but soO's mind games were too good. So he's going up to a lot of drones again, playing it pretty safely still, because he knows he just needs links to defend the War Prism harass. However, Stats decides this is the game where he's going to pull out the Owen finally. He's going to go for a 2-base soO train with the Immortals. Here comes the Overword again, but it's getting denied from a sentry. This is already a bit of a giveaway, and I know this could be also hindsight being 2020, an overreaction, but when sentries are clearing overworlds, it does remind you of something, doesn't it? War Prism is out on the map, but there's just one stalker. This was the slowest 3-stalker War Prism harassment ever. And soO is getting tipped off in my opinion, because look at how slow this is, look at how few stalkers. Why is this kind of late, right? Why are there only 3 stalkers? It's almost as if you're busy doing something else. Sends a link to the wall, and honestly I think he did see these 3 sentries behind the wall. Unless soO thinks that Stats thinks that soO is going for an all-in. It just doesn't make any sense, does it? Why are there 3 sentries with so much energy from the start? This is getting more and more obvious. If he morphed this Overword into an Overseer, the game would just be over. But instead, soO uses the links to chase the stalkers off, which he does easily because stalkers can't fight 20 links. He even almost kills them here in contesting the watchtower, and this link is the MVP of the series. Goes up, sees the army from Stats. 3rd base is missing, and when you switch to the soO cam, this link dies to 3 sentries and 2 immortals. Where is the probe? Where is the pylon? It's 5:40 into the game. Stats has been taking so many early expansions, this makes no sense. Even if you thought Stats was scared to expand because of your links, there would be a pylon, there would be zealots, not sentries and immortals. soO knows this is an obvious push, and not only that, it's never going to work, as we're about to see. Let's fast forward a bit more. Warpanes incoming. These stalkers are bruised, by the way, which is going to be a factor in the next fight. soO has stopped drone production 58. Remember the previous game he went up to 77. He knows. Stats steps on to creep, and this is the problem. How are you ever supposed to force field this? If soO contests this area, doesn't let Stats get a good position, there's nothing he can do. So many sentries, and it doesn't matter. Even more so, because he has so many sentries, there aren't enough of the other units. And what's worse, he has a full wall because he's so scared of the counterattack. No more immortals are coming. Where's the robo? Wait, okay, here's the robo. Nothing more is coming, not even another War Prism. Look at all the resources Stats hasn't spent. I think pointing to the resources is a great way to figure out that in fact Stats is tilted. He is never going to float so much if he isn't tilted. Which isn't taking any credit away from soO, if anything. soO played so calmly in this series, and he did win 4 games in a row. You don't just fall over and win 4 games in a row against the best Protoss player in the world, do you? First 4 force fields already is a bit of a waste, and look at this. 5 more. You don't have unlimited energy. He is going to pick off quite a few units, that's fair. Ravager is a bit late, but still ready. In any case, 2 to 3 Ravagers can deal with 12 sentries. But Stats is losing units left and right. 2 more sentries getting warped in, already reeks of desperation. 3 force fields, which is a bit more decent, but you can tell there's even a gap. These ramps are too big, this area is too big. At some points he's even fighting straight up. Look at all these force fields. It's just too much, isn't it? There are only 2 Immortals left. There are only 2 Immortals to begin with, I should say. It's just not enough. Sentries are dying. The next warp-ins are Stalkers, and as the rule of thumb, if a Protoss player is warping in Stalkers, you know, it's desperation time. soO loses a ton of drones, he even loses the Spine Crawler, but he has too much. Once again he uses the drones as Ghetto Zerglings against the Immortals. Warp Prism Micro is decent, but it's just too little, too late. soO is your IEM Katowice 2019 champion. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown. It's really amazing the level of composure soO showed in this tournament. He started in the group stage going down 0-3. The only way he gets out of the group stage at that point is winning 4-0 in his next 2 matches, which he did. And then in the playoffs he 3-0'd Zest. I think then it was sero's turn to test soO, and it's so fitting that soO defeated sero in 5 games. He had to pull himself together, considering he's playing against one of the best comeback players ever in sero. How many times have we seen sero go to the last game and pull it off? Instead, soO kept his composure, beat sero, the world champion, the #1 player in the world, then proceeded to go into an easy semi-final against Hero. Fair enough, after beating sero, you deserve an easy one. And then goes into the final against Stats, the best Protoss player in the world, the guy who only got denied championships because of sero, and then goes down 0-2. This is soO we are talking about, the guy who chokes things away. There was no choking to be had after losing the first 2 maps. Like he himself said, he thought it's going to happen again, isn't it? I'm just going to lose again. But instead, he told himself, I'm going to do everything I can, give it my all, which he did. He started playing phenomenally, starting from the 3rd map, did everything right, took advantage of Stats mistakes, but that's in the end how things go. When these players are so fucking good, the guy who makes slightly more mistakes ends up losing. It's all about keeping your composure, playing to your strengths, not doing stupid random shit. soO could have gone for some dumb Nidus he'd never done before and lost the game, got untilted, just like in a way Stats got tilted after going for some weird build and getting mind gamed. Then again though, I think Stats slightly misplayed in terms of build orders. I think he could have gone a lot more aggressive. He respected soO, I think, too much. Maybe part of him wanted soO to break the curse as well. Maybe even Stats' parents wanted soO to win, I don't even know. I think it was a good series overall. People said it was boring. I don't think you have a pulse if you can say it was boring watching soO make that incredible comeback, win 4 games in a row against Stats. Who wins 4 games in a row against Stats? That's fucking ridiculous. In any case, I had an amazing time watching this final. I still can't believe soO managed to change his destiny, his fate. He's now a champion, and I'm so happy he managed to do it in his last year of Starcraft. Here's hoping he can also pull off a miracle or 2 in the GSL. This didn't even feel like a miracle when you think about it. He just played phenomenally. There was no luck involved in his own play. He didn't go for some bullshit Owens and just got lucky. Oh, he caught Stats' entire army out of position 4 times in a row, that's how he won. No, he played to his strengths, he played standard most of the time. He mixed up his builds enough to give himself an edge, and he used that edge to win. Thanks again for watching the video. See you next time, whenever the fuck that is. Bye.